They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But as I sat in the back of that midnight black Rolls-Royce Phantom, watching the golden gates of the Grandview estate swing open before me, I realized revenge could also arrive in luxury, dripping with diamonds, wrapped in haute couture, and accompanied by 3 sleeping angels in car seats beside me. The invitation had arrived exactly 2 weeks ago. Thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold-embossed letters that seemed to mock me with every gilded swirl. Marcus Wellington and Vanessa Hartley request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration. My hands had trembled as I read my own name scrawled in Marcus's distinctive handwriting across the envelope. Not just an invitation, a summons. A final act of cruelty from the man who had destroyed me 5 years ago. Or so he thought. As the Rolls-Royce glided silently up the circular driveway, past rows of luxury vehicles that suddenly looked ordinary by comparison, I caught my reflection in the tinted window. The woman staring back was unrecognizable from the broken, pregnant girl Marcus had thrown away like garbage. My emerald eyes, once dulled by tears and desperation, now gleamed with quiet power. My dark hair, which I used to tie back in a messy ponytail while scrubbing his floors, now cascaded in glossy waves over my shoulders. The Valentino gown I wore probably cost more than the entire year's salary Marcus used to give me as allowance. But it wasn't the clothes or the car that made my heart race as we approached the grand entrance. It was what came next. The confrontation I'd been preparing for through 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears. 5 years of rising from the ashes. 5 years of becoming someone even I couldn't have imagined. My driver, James, a distinguished man in his 60s who had become like a father to me, caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Are you ready, Ms. Rosewood?" I looked at my sleeping triplets, Sophia, Ethan, and Oliver. 4 years old, with their father's dark hair and my determined chin. They didn't know where we were going or why. They didn't know that the man getting married today was the same man who had called them bastards before they were even born, who had thrown me out on the street when I was 6 months pregnant, who had laughed when I begged him not to leave me with nothing. "Yes, James," I said, my voice steady as steel. "I'm ready." The game was about to begin. And this time, I held all the cards. 2 weeks earlier, the morning the invitation arrived, I was in the middle of closing a $15 million deal. "Ms. Rosewood, the Henderson Group has agreed to your terms," my assistant, Patricia, announced through the intercom, her voice barely containing her excitement. "They're ready to sign." I leaned back in my leather chair, allowing myself a small smile as I gazed out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office on the 45th floor. The Manhattan skyline stretched before me like a kingdom I'd conquered one building at a time. 5 years ago, I'd been sleeping in a homeless shelter, my swollen belly making it nearly impossible to find a comfortable position. Now, I ran one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. "Excellent. Schedule the signing for Friday. And Patricia, make sure the press is there. I want Henderson to understand exactly what kind of partnership they're entering into." "Of course, Ms. Rosewood. Oh, and your mail is here. Should I bring it in?" "Just leave it on your desk. I'll get it later." But Patricia's voice took on an unusual tone. There's something here you might want to see right away. Hand-delivered. The courier said it was urgent." My instincts, honed by years of fighting my way up from nothing, tingled with warning. "Bring it in." Patricia entered, her usually composed face showing confusion. She placed a cream envelope on my desk, and I felt my blood run cold. Even before I saw the handwriting, I knew. Some scars never fully heal, they just wait beneath the surface, ready to tear open at the slightest touch. Mrs. Elena Rosewood, he'd crossed out Mrs. and written Ms. above it, a small act of cruelty that was so quintessentially Marcus. My hand hovered over the envelope. Patricia, sensing my distress, asked, "Shall I?" "No. Thank you, Patricia. That will be all." After she left, I sat in silence for a full minute, staring at that envelope like it was a coiled snake. Then, with the same decisiveness that had built my empire, I tore it open. The invitation was exactly what I'd expected. Lavish. Ostentatious. A wedding at the Grandview estate, the same venue where Marcus and I had gotten married 6 years ago, back when I was a naive 22-year-old who believed in fairy tales. But it was the handwritten note tucked inside that made my hands shake. "Elena, I do hope you'll attend. Vanessa would love to meet the woman I was foolish enough to marry when I was young and stupid. I've told her all about you, about how far you've fallen. She finds it tragic, really. But I assured her you wouldn't be able to afford appropriate attire for such an event. Perhaps you could borrow something? It would mean so much to see you there, to show Vanessa the mistake I made so she can appreciate how right our love is. With fond memories. Marcus. The bastard. The absolute bastard." My office door burst open, and my best friend and CFO, Rachel, stormed in, her red hair flying. I just saw Patricia's face. What happened? Did the Henderson deal fall through? Wordlessly, I handed her the invitation and note. Rachel's face cycled through shock, fury, and then something darker, calculation. We'd known each other since the shelter, where she'd been volunteering as a lawyer doing pro bono work. She'd helped me navigate the nightmare of my divorce, had been there when I gave birth to the triplets in a county hospital, had witnessed every ounce of pain Marcus Wellington had inflicted. "He wants to humiliate you," she said flatly. "This is a trap." "Of course it's a trap." I stood, pacing to the window. "He thinks I'm still that broken girl he threw away. He has no idea who I've become." "So you're not going?" I turned to face her, and something in my expression made her eyes widen. "Oh, I'm going. Elena. I'm going, Rachel. But not as the woman he remembers. Not as his victim." My mind was already racing, formulating a plan. "How much do we have in the discretionary fund?" Rachel's lips curved into a slow, knowing smile. "Enough. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time Marcus Wellington learned that the woman he destroyed died 5 years ago, and in her place rose someone he should fear." The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation, but not the kind Marcus would expect. While he probably imagined me scrounging through thrift stores or borrowing a dress from Goodwill, I was orchestrating something far more spectacular. Ms. Rosewood, the Valentino atelier called, Patricia informed me on Monday morning. "Your custom gown is ready for the final fitting." "Excellent. Clear my schedule for Thursday afternoon." Rachel appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand. "I've confirmed the Rolls-Royce. The dealership is delivering it Wednesday. They're also including a private driver for the day." "Perfect. And the other matter?" Her smile turned wicked. "The private investigator found everything we need. Marcus's company is hemorrhaging money. That merger he's been bragging about? It's a desperation move. He's 3 months from bankruptcy. I absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. Marcus Wellington, heir to the Wellington steel fortune, was broke. How poetic. What about Vanessa Hartley? The daughter of Richard Hartley, owner of Hartley Investments. She's 26, never worked a day in her life, and has a social media presence that would make a Kardashian jealous. From what I can tell, Marcus is marrying her for her father's money. So it's a business transaction disguised as love. I laughed bitterly. How fitting. That evening, as I tucked Sophia, Ethan, and Oliver into bed, Sophia looked up at me with her wide, innocent eyes. "Mama, why are you wearing fancy dresses lately?" I brushed her dark curls from her forehead. "Mama has somewhere special to go soon." "Can we come?" Ethan asked, always the adventurous one. I hesitated. Taking the triplets to Marcus's wedding was a risk. But it was also the ultimate statement. These children, the ones he'd rejected, the ones he'd called mistakes, were beautiful, brilliant, and loved beyond measure. "Would you like to go to a fancy party?" I asked. 3 faces lit up with excitement, and Oliver, my quiet thinker, asked, "Will there be cake?" "The biggest cake you've ever seen." What I didn't tell them was that their biological father would be there. They knew nothing about Marcus Wellington. As far as they were concerned, they had me, Aunt Rachel, and a whole community of people at my company who loved them. They didn't need a father who hadn't wanted them. But Marcus needed to see them. Needed to understand exactly what he'd thrown away. Wednesday arrived, and with it, the Rolls-Royce. I stood in my penthouse's private garage, watching as the gleaming black Phantom was unloaded from the transport vehicle. It was a work of art, every line, every curve screaming wealth and power. James, the driver the dealership had sent, approached me with a respectful nod. "Ms. Rosewood, it's an honor. I've reviewed the route to the Grandview estate. We'll arrive exactly when you specify." "Thank you, James. I need to make an entrance." His eyes twinkled with understanding. "Leave it to me, I've been driving for 35 years. I know how to make a statement." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the last time I'd seen Marcus, the day he'd thrown me out. 5 years ago. "You can't do this, Marcus. I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child." He'd looked at me with such cold contempt that I'd actually stepped back. We were in the living room of the mansion, his family's mansion, where I'd never truly belonged. His mother stood in the corner, her face a mask of disgust. "My child." Marcus laughed cruelly. "How do I even know it's mine? You could have been sleeping with anyone." The accusation had hit me like a physical blow. "How can you say that? I've never been with anyone but you. Please." He'd poured himself a scotch, his movements casual, unbothered. "You were a waitress when I met you, Elena. A nobody. Did you really think this would last? That I would stay married to someone so beneath me? But you said you loved me." I loved the idea of rebellion. Marrying you was fun. It drove my parents crazy. But now. He gestured around the opulent room. "It's time to get back to reality. My real life. With people of my own class. What about our baby?" Get rid of it. Here. He'd tossed an envelope at my feet. There's $5,000. More than enough for an abortion and to get you started somewhere else. I'd stared at the envelope, then at him, and something inside me had cracked. I won't get rid of our baby. His expression had turned vicious. Fine. Keep it. But you'll do it on your own. My lawyers will have divorce papers to you by the end of the week. You'll get nothing. You signed a prenup, remember? That little document you didn't bother to read because you were so blinded by love. I had read it. I'd just been too naive to understand what I was signing away. You can't just. I can, and I am. Now get out of my house. Marcus, please. He'd grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in painfully. I said, get out. Take your pathetic tears and your bastard child and get the hell out of my life. His mother had finally spoken. Marcus, dear, there's no need to be crude. Elena, you've enjoyed a year of luxury you never would have experienced otherwise. Be grateful for that and leave with some dignity. Dignity. They'd spoken to me about dignity while throwing a pregnant woman into the street. I'd gathered what little I could carry. They wouldn't even let me take the few nice clothes Marcus had bought me, and left. The security guard had actually escorted me to the gate, as if I were a criminal. That night, I'd slept in a 24-hour diner, sipping free water refills until the sun came up. The memory still had the power to make me clench my fists. But I wasn't that girl anymore. That broken, desperate girl had transformed into someone Marcus wouldn't recognize. Thursday's dress fitting was perfect. The Valentino gown was a masterpiece, deep emerald green that matched my eyes, with a fitted bodice and a flowing skirt that whispered wealth with every movement. The neckline was elegant but daring, and the fabric shimmered like scales on a dragon. You look like a queen, Rachel breathed as I stood on the platform, the seamstress making final adjustments. I feel like a warrior, I replied. Good. Because that's what you are. Friday morning, I received an unexpected call. Ms. Rosewood. This is Richard Hartley. I nearly dropped my coffee. Richard Hartley, Vanessa's father, one of the most powerful investors in the country, and potentially my future competitor or ally. Mr. Hartley, this is unexpected. I'll be brief. I understand you're attending my daughter's wedding tomorrow. My mind raced. How did he know? Yes, I received an invitation. From Marcus Wellington. It wasn't a question. Ms. Rosewood, I'm a businessman, and I make it my business to know everything about anyone my daughter associates with. I know who you are. I know what Wellington did to you, and I know what you've built since then. I see. I also know, he continued, his voice taking on a harder edge, that Wellington is marrying my daughter for her money. Or rather, for my money. Interesting. And you're allowing this. Vanessa is 26 and thinks she's in love. I've learned you can't tell young people anything. They have to learn for themselves. But I wanted you to know that whatever you're planning, whatever statement you're going to make tomorrow, you have my blessing. I was stunned. Why are you telling me this? Because I've been watching your company, Ms. Rosewood. Rosewood Technologies is impressive. You've done in 5 years what most people couldn't do in 20. And you did it while raising triplets alone. He paused. Wellington is a fool. And fools should be taught lessons. After he hung up, I sat in silence, absorbing what had just happened. Richard Hartley had just given me carte blanche to crash his daughter's wedding. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all. Saturday morning dawned clear and perfect, the kind of day that made you believe in new beginnings. I dressed the triplets in their finest clothes. Sophia in a pale pink dress that made her look like a princess, Ethan and Oliver in matching navy suits that made them look like tiny businessmen. "Mama, you look like a movie star," Sophia whispered as I emerged from my bedroom in the Valentino gown, my hair swept up in an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at my throat and wrists. Real diamonds this time, not the cubic zirconia I'd worn as Marcus's wife. "Thank you, baby. You look beautiful too." Rachel arrived to help us get ready, and she looked nearly as stunning as I did in a deep burgundy gown. "Your chariot awaits," she announced dramatically. The triplets squealed with delight when they saw the Rolls-Royce. James helped them into their car seats with practiced ease while I settled into the leather interior, my heart beginning to race. "Remember," Rachel said, gripping my hand before I left, "you've already won. Everything after this is just the victory lap." But as we drove toward the Grandview estate, I felt the old fears trying to creep in. What if Marcus laughed at me? What if he found some new way to humiliate me? What if... "Mama, why are you shaking?" Oliver asked, his small hand touching mine. I looked at my 3 children, these perfect beings I'd created and nurtured through hell and back, and my resolve solidified. "I'm not shaking, sweetheart. I'm ready." As we approached the gates, I could see guests arriving in luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, a few Bentleys. Nice cars. But nothing compared to the Rolls-Royce Phantom. James caught my eye in the mirror. "Ready, Ms. Rosewood." "Ready." The gates opened, and we glided through. I could see guests turning to look, their conversations pausing. The Rolls-Royce commanded attention. It demanded it. We pulled up to the main entrance, where a red carpet had been laid out. A valet rushed forward, then froze when he saw the car. James got out first, coming around to open my door with perfect formality. The moment my Louboutin heel touched that red carpet, the murmurs began. I stepped out slowly, deliberately, letting them see every inch of the emerald gown, every sparkle of the diamonds. Then I turned back to the car, and James helped Sophia out first. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then Ethan. Then Oliver. 3 beautiful children, looking like they'd stepped out of a magazine spread, holding hands and gazing around with wonder. "Who is that?" someone whispered. Is that Elena? Marcus's ex-wife. She looks incredible. Are those her children? I heard she was pregnant when he divorced her. I took Sophia's and Ethan's hands while Oliver held his sister's other hand, and we walked up that red carpet like we owned it. My head was high, my smile serene, and every eye was on us. At the entrance, a greeter with a guest list looked at me with wide eyes. "Name, please." "Elena Rosewood." She scanned the list, found my name, and swallowed hard. Of course. "Welcome, Ms. Rosewood. The ceremony is in the garden. Through those doors and to the left." The estate was even more opulent than I remembered. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, flowers everywhere, money dripping from every surface. But I'd seen it all before, And now I had my own wealth. This didn't intimidate me anymore. We entered the garden, and the scene was like something from a movie. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, an aisle covered in rose petals, an elaborate arch covered in flowers where Marcus would soon be standing. Guests were mingling, drinking champagne, laughing. And then they saw me. The effect was immediate and electric. Conversations died. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. People stared, then whispered behind their hands. I recognized many of them, Marcus's friends, his family, people who had looked down on me when I was his wife. His mother stood near the front, and when she saw me, her face went white. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking for him. And then I saw him, standing near the arch in his tuxedo, talking to his groomsmen. He was laughing at something, looking relaxed and happy, completely unaware that his world was about to tilt. One of his friends noticed me and grabbed his arm, pointing. Marcus turned. Our eyes met across the garden, and I watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, shock, and something that might have been fear. He started walking toward me, his expression darkening with each step. I stood my ground, my children gathered around me like shields. "Elena," he said when he reached me, his voice tight. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, sweet as poison. "Why, Marcus, you invited me. Don't you remember? You said Vanessa would love to meet me." His eyes dropped to the triplets, and I saw the moment he understood. These weren't abstract concepts anymore. These were real children, beautiful and healthy, looking up at him with curious eyes. "These are..." He started, his voice strangled. "Your children," I finished calmly. "Sophia, Ethan, and Oliver. Say hello to, well, to an old family friend." "Hi," Sophia said cheerfully, oblivious to the tension. Marcus's face had gone red. "You can't be here. You can't bring them here." "Why not? You invited me. And they're part of me, Marcus. Where I go, they go." People were starting to gather, sensing drama. I could see his mother pushing through the crowd, her face twisted in fury. "You need to leave," Marcus hissed. "This is my wedding day." "Oh, I know. That's why I'm here. To celebrate your happiness. To show Vanessa the woman you used to be married to. Wasn't that what you wanted?" I gestured to my gown, the diamonds. "I'm appropriately dressed, wouldn't you say?" He was speechless, his eyes roaming over my appearance, clearly trying to reconcile this poised, powerful woman with the broken girl he'd thrown away. "How?" he finally managed. "How did I afford all this?" I smiled wider. "That's a wonderful question, Marcus. You see, after you threw me out, I had a choice. I could give up, or I could rise. I chose to rise. Elena, you need to." "Marcus, there you are." A high, bright voice cut through the tension. A young woman in a white dress, not the wedding gown, but clearly the bride in her pre-ceremony outfit, rushed over. Vanessa Hartley was pretty in that carefully constructed way, with blonde hair extensions and professionally done makeup. She looked at me with curiosity, not hostility. "Who's this?" she asked Marcus, but her eyes were on the triplets. "Vanessa, this is... Elena Rosewood," I said, extending my hand. Marcus's ex-wife. Congratulations on your wedding. Vanessa's eyes went wide, but she took my hand. Oh, Elena. Marcus told me about you. Then her gaze shifted to the children, and her expression softened. And are these my children? Sophia, Ethan, and Oliver. They are beautiful. She bent down to their level. I love your dress, she told Sophia, who beamed. Marcus looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Vanessa, he said tightly, we need to. Ms. Rosewood. A booming voice interrupted, and Richard Hartley himself appeared, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. I'm so glad you could make it. Marcus's jaw actually dropped. You know each other. We've spoken, I said carefully. Richard smiled at the triplets. And these must be the famous triplets I've heard about. Beautiful children, Ms. Rosewood. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Hartley. Vanessa looked between her father and me, confused but clearly delighted by the attention. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Ms. Rosewood runs Rosewood Technologies, Richard told his daughter. One of the most successful tech companies in the country. Completely self-made. Remarkable woman. Really? Vanessa looked at me with newfound respect. That's incredible. Marcus, you didn't tell me your ex-wife was a CEO. She wasn't anything when we were married, Marcus stammered. The words hung in the air, revealing exactly what he'd thought of me. Richard's expression cooled. Wasn't anything? That's an interesting way to describe your former wife. I didn't mean. But the damage was done. I could see Vanessa's face changing, really looking at Marcus for the first time. We should take our seats, I said smoothly. I wouldn't want to miss the ceremony. Of course, Richard agreed. Vanessa, you should get ready. Marcus, don't you have groomsmen duties? As they scattered, I led the triplets to seats in the back. I had no intention of sitting up front. But as I settled in, I noticed something. People were watching me, not with the disdain I remembered, but with curiosity and respect. Word was already spreading about who I was now. Marcus's mother approached, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. How dare you come here? I looked up at her calmly. Your son invited me to humiliate you, not so you could parade around in borrowed finery with your bastard children. The words should have hurt. 5 years ago, they would have destroyed me. Now, they just made me tired. Mrs. Wellington, I said quietly, these children are your grandchildren. You might want to remember that. She looked at Sophia, Ethan, and Oliver as if seeing them for the first time. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Regret? Curiosity? But then her face hardened again. They're nothing to me. Just like you. She walked away, and Sophia tugged on my hand. Mama, why was that lady mean? Some people are just unhappy, sweetheart. It has nothing to do with you. The ceremony began shortly after. I sat through it with a serene expression, watching Marcus marry a woman he didn't love for money he desperately needed. Vanessa looked radiant, blissfully unaware that her groom kept glancing back at me with a mixture of fury and something else. Fear, maybe. Or regret. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," and Marcus kissed Vanessa, I felt nothing. No pain, no jealousy. Just a distant satisfaction that his lips were on someone else while his life fell apart around him. At the reception, the real show began. The reception hall was magnificent, all crystal and gold, with tables laden with food, a live band, and enough champagne to float a yacht. I found a table in a strategic position, not too close to the head table but visible enough to be noticed. The triplets were in heaven, especially when they saw the dessert table. I let them enjoy the celebration while I sipped champagne and watched the dynamics unfold. Marcus and Vanessa made their rounds, thanking guests. I could see him steering her away from my table, but Richard Hartley had other plans. "Vanessa, dear, come meet Ms. Rosewood properly," he called, leading his daughter over. Vanessa settled into the chair next to me, her wedding gown a froth of white lace and tulle. "My father says you started your company from nothing." "From less than nothing," I admitted. "I was homeless when I started." Her eyes widened. "Homeless? But how?" I glanced at Marcus, who was hovering nearby, looking increasingly uncomfortable. After my divorce, I had nowhere to go. I was pregnant with no job, no money, and no family. So I started at the bottom and worked my way up. That's incredible." She looked at Marcus. "You never told me your ex-wife was homeless." "It wasn't relevant," he muttered. "Wasn't relevant." Vanessa's voice rose slightly. "Marcus, she was carrying your child and living on the streets." "Children," Richard corrected, looking at the triplets fondly. "Triplets, actually. Even more remarkable." I could see the gears turning in Vanessa's head. She wasn't stupid, just sheltered. And she was beginning to piece together a picture she didn't like. "Marcus," she said slowly, "where were you when Elena was homeless and pregnant?" "Vanessa, this isn't the time." "Where were you?" she repeated, her voice harder. The nearby tables had gone quiet, guests leaning in to hear. Marcus's face was scarlet. "I had moved on. We were divorced. But she was carrying your children. I didn't know there would be 3 of them." Wrong answer. Spectacularly wrong answer. Vanessa stood up, her expression thunderous. "You didn't know there would be 3? So 1 child you could abandon, but 3 was too many? Is that what you're saying?" "Vanessa, you're making a scene." "I'm making a scene." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Marcus, you let your pregnant ex-wife become homeless. You abandoned your own children. And you invited her here to humiliate her because you thought she'd still be poor and broken." The entire reception had fallen silent now. Everyone was watching the bride tear into her groom. I didn't," Marcus floundered. But Vanessa wasn't done. She turned to me, and I saw tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. He told me the divorce was mutual, that you'd both moved on. He never mentioned children." "It's all right," I said gently. "You didn't know." "It's not all right." She whirled back to Marcus. "You're a liar, a coward, and a terrible person." "Vanessa, please, we can discuss this later." "Discuss what?" "How you're only marrying me for my father's money." "Yes, Elena told me about your company's financial troubles. I hadn't, actually. That must have been Richard, but I wasn't going to correct her. Marcus's face went from red to white. Your father. Richard stepped forward, his expression cold. Did you really think I wouldn't investigate the man my daughter was marrying? I know everything. Wellington. The failed investments, the mounting debts, the fact that you're 3 months from bankruptcy. You thought marrying Vanessa would save you. The crowd was eating this up. I almost felt sorry for Marcus. Almost. Daddy, is this true? Vanessa asked. Every word, Richard confirmed. Marcus looked around desperately, searching for an ally, an escape. His eyes landed on me, and suddenly his expression changed, twisted into something ugly and familiar. This is your fault, he shouted, pointing at me. You did this. You planned this whole thing. I stood slowly, calmly. I planned to attend a wedding I was invited to, Marcus. That's all. You're a vindictive bitch. You couldn't stand to see me happy. Happy? I let out a genuine laugh. Marcus, you're not happy. You're desperate. You're broke. And you're marrying someone you don't love for money that won't save you. You don't know anything about my feelings. Don't I? You told me yourself in that charming note you sent with the invitation. You wanted to humiliate me, to parade me in front of your new wife as an example of your poor judgment. Well, congratulations. I'm here. But I'm not the one being humiliated. He lunged toward me, and several guests jumped up to restrain him. In the chaos, Sophia started to cry. I immediately scooped her up, sheltering her from the scene. It's okay, baby, I murmured. Everything's okay. Vanessa ripped off her veil, tears streaming down her face. This wedding is over. Daddy, take me home. Of course, princess. As they left, Vanessa paused next to me. Thank you, she whispered. You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life. After they were gone, Marcus stood in the center of the reception hall, his perfect day in ruins around him. His mother rushed to his side, along with a few loyal friends, but most of the guests were already leaving, scandalized and delighted by the drama. I gathered the triplets, ready to make my exit. My work here was done. But Marcus wasn't finished. He broke free from his mother and blocked my path. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, Marcus, it is. It's been over for 5 years. You just didn't know it. I'll destroy you. Your company, your reputation, everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a broken man who had never grown up, who had never learned that actions have consequences. You can try, I said softly, but I've already survived the worst thing you could do to me. You threw me away when I was pregnant and helpless. You left me with nothing. And look at me now. I gestured to myself, to my children. I'm successful, happy, and surrounded by people I love. While you're bankrupt, alone, and broken. You can't destroy me, Marcus. Because I've already risen from the ashes of what you tried to do. Those children should have been mine to raise, he said suddenly, looking at the triplets with something like regret. They were yours to raise. You chose not to. You called them bastards before they were even born. So no, they're not yours. They're mine. And they're better off without you. I walked past him, my children at my side, and didn't look back. James was waiting with the Rolls-Royce. As we drove away from the Grandview estate, I watched it disappear in the rearview mirror, a monument to old money and empty values. "Mama, can we come back to another party like that?" Ethan asked. I laughed, genuine and free. "No, sweetheart. That was a one-time thing." "Good," Oliver said. "'Cause that man was scary when he yelled." He was, wasn't he? But he can't hurt us anymore. And it was true. Marcus Wellington had no power over me anymore. I'd faced my demons, walked into the lion's den, and emerged victorious not because I'd destroyed him, he'd done that himself, but because I'd shown him exactly what he'd lost. The headlines had been spectacular. Wedding disaster. Heir exposed as gold digger. From homeless to CEO. Elena Rosewood's incredible journey. Vanessa Hartley calls off wedding after shocking revelations. Marcus's company had indeed declared bankruptcy 3 months after the wedding. He tried to sue me for defamation, but there was nothing to sue for. I'd only told the truth. His reputation was in tatters, and last I heard, he'd moved to Boston to start over. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall. Just relief that it was over. Richard Hartley had called me a week after the wedding. "Ms. Rosewood, I'd like to discuss a potential partnership between our companies." That partnership was now in its final stages of negotiation. Hartley Investments was backing my new expansion into AI technology, a move that would make Rosewood Technologies a major player in the global market. Vanessa had also called, surprisingly. She'd apologized again, and we'd met for coffee. I'd found her sweet and genuine beneath the social media facade. She was taking time to figure out who she was outside of her father's world and her failed engagement. "I'm thinking about going back to school," she told me over lattes. "Maybe studying something useful for once." "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "You inspire me," she admitted. "You lost everything and built an empire. I've had everything handed to me and done nothing with it. You're 26. You have time." We'd parted as unlikely friends, and I genuinely hoped she'd find her path. As for me, life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. The triplets were thriving. Sophia wanted to be a fashion designer, Ethan was obsessed with dinosaurs, and Oliver was showing signs of being a mathematical prodigy. My company was growing exponentially, and I'd just been featured on the cover of Forbes magazine. But the best moment came on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was in my office when Patricia buzzed in. "Ms. Rosewood, there's a Marcus Wellington here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment." My first instinct was to refuse, but curiosity got the better of me. "Send him in." Marcus entered my office looking smaller somehow. His clothes were nice but not designer, his hair less perfectly styled. He looked ordinary. "Elena," he said, standing awkwardly in front of my desk. "Marcus, what can I do for you?" He looked around my office, the awards on the walls, the photos of the triplets, the view of Manhattan spread out before us. "I wanted to apologize," he said finally. I sat back, studying him. "Apologize? For everything. For how I treated you. For abandoning you when you were pregnant. For inviting you to the wedding to humiliate you." He took a breath. "For being a complete bastard." I let the words hang there for a moment. Why now? Because I've lost everything. My money, my reputation, my pride. And in losing it, I realized what I'd had and thrown away. He looked at me with something like wonder. You loved me. Really loved me. And I destroyed that. Yes, you did. I know I have no right to ask, but could you ever forgive me? I considered his question carefully. Could I forgive him? The man who had caused me so much pain, who had abandoned me and our children, who had tried one last time to hurt me even after all these years. I can forgive you, I said slowly, but not for you. For me. Because holding on to anger takes energy I'd rather spend on my children and my company. He nodded, accepting this. I'd like to meet them. The triplets. If you'd let me. No. His face fell. Elena, please. Marcus, those children don't know you. You're not their father in any meaningful way. You're just the man who donated DNA. They have a life without you. And they're happy. I won't disrupt that because you've suddenly developed a conscience. I have rights. You signed away your rights when you divorced me. Remember, you didn't want to pay child support, so you terminated your parental rights. It's all legal and binding. He slumped into a chair without being invited. I've made such a mess of everything. Yes, you have. But you can start over. You're only 32. You have time to become a better person. Will you help me? With a job, maybe? A recommendation. And there it was. The real reason for his visit. Same way I did. You need to struggle and fight and claw your way back. Maybe then you'll appreciate what you have. So that's it. After everything, you're just going to turn me away. I turned to face him. After everything. Marcus, you threw a pregnant woman into the street. You invited me to your wedding to humiliate me. You've done nothing but cause me pain. And now you want me to help you. I shook my head. I don't owe you anything. Not forgiveness, not help, not even this conversation. The fact that I've given you this much is more than you deserve. He stood, recognizing defeat. At the door, he paused. You were always too good for me. I know, I said simply. After he left, I sat in my office, feeling lighter than I had in years. The ghost of Marcus Wellington had finally been laid to rest. Not with revenge or cruelty, but with simple, honest boundaries. That evening, I picked up the triplets from their private school. They ran to me with stories about their day, their faces bright with joy. Mama, I painted you a picture. Sophia announced. I scored a goal in soccer. Ethan added. I learned about fractions. Oliver contributed. I hugged them tight, these three perfect beings who had saved me as much as I'd saved them. I love you all so much, I told them. We love you too, Mama, they chorused. As we drove home in my car, not the Rolls-Royce, which I'd returned, but a sensible luxury SUV, I reflected on the journey. From battered wife to homeless mother to successful CEO. It had been hell, but I'd made it through. And the best revenge? It wasn't the humiliation at the wedding or Marcus's bankruptcy. It was this, living well, being happy, raising three incredible children who would never know what it meant to be unwanted. That night, after tucking the triplets into bed, I stood on my penthouse balcony, looking out at the city I'd conquered. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably drinking alone, mourning his losses. But I was here, surrounded by love and success and possibility. I raised a glass of wine to the night sky. To new beginnings, I whispered, and to never looking back. The city lights twinkled like diamonds, and I smiled. The story that had started with such pain had ended in triumph. Not the dramatic, explosive kind of triumph you see in movies, but the real kind, the quiet satisfaction of knowing you'd survived, thrived, and became more than anyone thought possible. I'd invited my ex-husband to his own reckoning, and I'd emerged victorious. Not because I'd destroyed him, but because I'd built something beautiful from the ashes he'd left behind. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all.